thing that really interests me the most is the human element. You know, it's one thing to be like, this event happened and this event happened, and that's great. But there's people that made all those events happen, and there's people who were affected by those events. It's like, what happened to those people? How were their lives shaped by that? And then because of my genealogy component, I was thinking, how did that go forward, right? So, okay, that event affected this person, but then that person had kids and kids and kids. You know, you think about all the people who were raised in the Depression who collected everything, right? Like, you can't let any scrap of paper go. You can't let a plastic container go. And then they had kids. And then a lot of their kids, for no reason, but because they were raised that way, collect a lot of stuff. And so it's this thing where it's like, this event has all these things that come after it. So my name is Mica L, and I live a right brain and left brain life. And I am a professional artist. I'm a teaching artist, a public artist. I do artist in residencies, and I have sort of art pieces around the Twin Cities. So that's half of my brain. In my other half of my brain, I am a professional genealogist, oral historian, and historian in general. And I like to say, in a perfect world, I'm able to marry those together and do cool things like do a project and then design the exhibit, or do history and then make an art piece that's about the history of an area. So that's what I like to do. When I think about the type of history I study, a lot of what I do comes from family, right? So a lot of my background is genealogy. And so I do a couple different things. I either do personal histories for people, but I also do community history. That's sort of my niche. And with community history, a lot of times it's trying to learn about African-American communities, typically historic African-American communities that may not exist anymore. So I've done things here in the Rondo neighborhood in St. Paul, which is where I live. I've done some work to learn more about the history of the Rondo neighborhood. I've created displays at the Rondo Museum down the street, the Rondo Plaza, to document the history. I've done some projects in Waterloo, Iowa, where they had a pretty thriving African-American community for a long time. They still do, but a lot of the historic components are gone. And so I've been doing a project down there to learn about who was here, what was life like. So it's really not just about the people, but it's just about the community. I will be researching the early African Americans in southeast Minnesota. So Rochester, Owatonna, Red Wing, Faribault, and even the teeny tiny towns like Kaysen and Dodge and all these different places. And I really want to learn who was there, how they got there, right? Because everybody came from somewhere if you're not native to this land. So, you know, what made people go to these areas and not maybe to St. Paul or Minneapolis or Duluth, a little larger places? You know, why would people settle in these teeny tiny towns where they may have been the only Black family? So that's part of it, is who was there, why were they there, and then what was life like? You know, did the African-American families in Rochester know the families in Owatonna because there were so few of them? Or was it more geared towards the community they lived in, and their race and ethnicity didn't play the same role that we in our current mindset think it would? You know, what was life like in the towns? I found some newspaper articles talking about Old Joe, who was the first African-American in Rochester. And he's referred to in the newspaper. I mean, he's a big deal, but he was still a community member, just a man around town. I've learned about some of the early inhabitants in Owatonna, and some of them are listed as some of the founding members of the town. You know, some of them were barbers. And there's this huge network of Black barbers that brought people in, and they didn't only serve Black customers. So there's something there that we don't associate with how life is now. You don't see a lot of people go to barbers who don't have hair like theirs, for example. So that's part of what I want to do, is learn about, and did they stay? Or did they all end up coming to the cities, right? Did they come to St. Paul and Minneapolis? Did they go to Chicago? Did they go to Kansas City? Or even Des Moines and Waterloo, honestly? Or were they able to stay in those communities? And after that, time dependent, I want to do some descendant tracing. And I want to find living descendants of some of these people and give them back their history.